A millionaire is stopped by a beggar girl who hands him a photo and begs, "Sir, could you write a letter to my mother? She's in heaven, but I can't write." When the man saw the photo, he instantly began to cry. If this story interested you, subscribe to our channel, don't forget to like this video, and tell us which city you're watching us from. We'll keep going. Marcus Reynolds adjusted his Italian silk tie as he strode purposefully down Fifth Avenue, his mind consumed with the upcoming board meeting. At 35, he had already amassed a fortune that most could only dream of, transforming a small tech startup into a billion-dollar empire. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bustling New York sidewalk, but Marcus barely noticed the world around him. His thoughts were filled with profit margins, market expansions, and the presentation he would deliver in less than an hour. A gentle tug at his sleeve nearly made him stumble. Irritated by the interruption, he looked down to find a small girl no more than 8 years old, staring up at him with eyes that seemed to hold the weight of the world. Her clothes were worn and ill-fitting, her dark hair tied back in a messy ponytail, but it was her expression that made Marcus pause. There was something in her gaze that cut through his carefully constructed walls of indifference. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, clutching a creased photograph to her chest. "Could you help me write a letter? It's for my mom. She's in heaven, and I don't know how to write yet." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He checked his watch. The board meeting was crucial and he was already cutting it close. Yet something about this child's request rooted him to the spot. The little girl held out the photograph, her small hands trembling slightly. "My name is Sophie," she continued, her voice barely above a whisper, "and I really need to tell my mom something important." Marcus found himself following Sophie to a nearby bench, his meeting momentarily forgotten. As they sat down, she carefully smoothed out the photograph, handling it as if it were made of the most delicate glass. The image showed a woman with a warm smile and kind eyes, her arms wrapped around a younger version of Sophie. "What would you like to say to her?" Marcus asked, pulling out his phone to take notes. But as Sophie began to speak, he found himself lowering the device, captivated by the raw emotion in her words. "Dear Mommy," Sophie dictated, her voice growing stronger. "I miss you every day. I hope heaven is beautiful, just like you always said it would be. Remember when we used to watch the clouds together and make up stories about what shapes we saw? I still do that sometimes, and I pretend you're sitting next to me." Marcus felt an unexpected tightness in his throat as he listened. Sophie continued, sharing memories of birthday cakes with rainbow sprinkles, bedtime stories about brave princesses, and morning walks to school filled with songs and laughter. But it was when she pulled out a second photograph that Marcus's world tilted on its axis. The image was older, yellowed at the edges, showing a group of teenagers at what appeared to be a high school graduation. His breath caught as he recognized a familiar face, Sarah Thompson, his childhood best friend, the same woman from Sophie's first photograph, though years younger. Memories flooded back, summer afternoons spent planning their futures, shared dreams of changing the world, promises to always be there for each other. Sarah had reached out to him several times over the years, but he had always been too busy, too focused on building his empire. Her calls had gone unanswered, her emails unread. Now looking at her daughter's face, Marcus saw the same determination, the same quiet strength that he had once admired in Sarah. "Sophie," he said carefully, his voice unusually gentle, "how did you know to find me here?" The little girl's eyes widened slightly. "I didn't," she replied simply. "I've been asking different people every day to help me write to Mommy, but nobody ever stopped before. They all looked too busy." Marcus felt the weight of those words settle in his chest. He had been one of those busy people rushing past life's most meaningful moments in pursuit of the next big deal. But now, sitting on this bench with Sophie, his perfectly ordered world began to shift, revealing the emptiness he had never allowed himself to acknowledge. As the sun continued its descent, behind the city's towering skyscrapers, Marcus made a decision that would change both their lives forever. He reached for his phone once more, But this time it wasn't to check his schedule or send an email. Instead, he began to type the words that Sophie was sharing, each sentence a bridge between a daughter's love and a mother's memory. The board meeting came and went without Marcus's presence, but for the first time in his adult life, he didn't care about a missed business opportunity. After finishing Sophie's letter, he couldn't bring himself to simply walk away. Learning that she had been living in a rundown apartment building with only occasional supervision from elderly neighbors, he insisted on making sure she was safe. As they sat in his penthouse office later that evening, Sophie's small frame dwarfed by the leather executive chair, Marcus found himself opening up the locked drawer of memories he had kept shut for so long. He remembered Sarah Thompson not just as the woman in the photograph, but as the friend who had believed in him when no one else did. "Your mother," he began, watching Sophie's eyes light up at the mention of Sarah, "was one of the kindest people I've ever known. We went to school together." Sophie leaned forward, hungry for any information about her mother. "Did she always make funny faces when she was thinking really hard? Like this?" The little girl scrunched up her nose and furrowed her brow in an expression so familiar that Marcus had to laugh. "She did," he confirmed, remembering countless study sessions where Sarah had worn that exact expression, and she always stood up for people who needed help, even when it wasn't the easy thing to do. As they talked, Marcus's assistant Jennifer brought in hot chocolate for Sophie and coffee for him. The girl's eyes widened at the marshmallows floating in her drink, and she carefully wrapped her hands around the mug as if it were precious treasure. "Mom used to make hot chocolate on rainy days," Sophie shared, her voice soft with remembrance. "She said it was like drinking liquid sunshine to make the gray go away." Marcus felt something crack inside his carefully constructed facade. How many times had Sarah offered him that same comfort during their teenage years? How many times had she been there for him, only for him to eventually shut her out completely? "Sophie," he said, making a decision that felt both terrifying and absolutely right. "Would you like to stay here tonight? We can get you some new clothes tomorrow and figure out what to do next." The hope that bloomed across Sophie's face was quickly tempered by worry. "But what about your important meetings? Mom used to say that busy people don't have time for small things." "You're not a small thing, Sophie," Marcus replied firmly, surprising himself with the conviction in his voice. "And sometimes the most important meetings aren't the ones in boardrooms." That night, as he showed Sophie to one of his guest rooms, a space that had never felt more sterile and unsuitable for a child, Marcus began making calls. He contacted his lawyer, his HR department, and several social services agencies. The wheels of bureaucracy began turning, but for once Marcus wasn't trying to navigate them for business advantage. Instead, he was driven by a purpose that felt more genuine than any deal he'd ever closed. Sophie's presence in his home was like a splash of color across a monochrome canvas. She approached everything with a mixture of cautious wonder and innate grace that reminded him so much of Sarah. When she discovered his rarely used kitchen, she asked if they could bake cookies like she used to do with her mother. Despite his complete lack of culinary skills, Marcus found himself covered in flour that evening, learning the proper technique for rolling cookie dough from an 8-year-old expert. As they waited for the cookies to bake, Sophie shared more stories about Sarah. Each one was like a knife to Marcus's heart, reminding him of opportunities lost and friendship abandoned. But mixed with the pain was something else, a growing determination to honor Sarah's memory by protecting the daughter she had left behind. What he didn't know then was that his decision to help Sophie would soon be challenged in ways he never expected. The simple act of kindness was about to evolve into a complex web of emotions, responsibilities, and choices that would force him to confront not only his past but also his assumptions about what truly makes a family. The following days brought changes that neither Marcus nor Sophie could have anticipated. The stark minimalism of Marcus's penthouse gradually gave way to subtle transformations. A purple backpack hung by the door, bright drawings magnetized to the refrigerator, and a collection of stuffed animals that seemed to multiply daily. Each new addition marked another step in their unexpected journey together. Jennifer, Marcus's usually unflappable assistant, found herself adapting to the new dynamic with surprising enthusiasm. She helped Sophie pick out clothes and school supplies, her corporate efficiency softening into genuine care for the little girl. The shopping expedition revealed more about Sophie's life than Marcus had been prepared for. She marveled at simple things like having multiple pairs of socks or a lunchbox of her own. "Mom always said that having too many things makes your heart heavy," Sophie explained as she carefully arranged her new possessions in the guest room that was becoming hers. "But she also said that love makes your heart lighter than air. Is it okay if I make this space a little bit like our old apartment?" Marcus found himself nodding, throat tight with emotion. "Of course, this is your home now, Sophie. You can make it exactly how you want it." The words slipped out before he could analyze them, but their impact was immediate. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment Marcus panicked, thinking he'd said the wrong thing. But then she launched herself at him, wrapping her small arms around his waist in a fierce hug. "Really? You mean it?" she whispered against his shirt. "Because I've been scared to unpack everything. What if you change your mind?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. How many times had this child faced uncertainty and disappointment? He knelt down to her level, meeting her eyes with unwavering sincerity. "Sophie, I want you to listen carefully. I'm not going to change my mind. I know this is all new and different, but we're in this together now, okay?" She nodded solemnly, then brightened. "Can we make pizza for dinner? Mom taught me her special recipe. She said it was magic because it could make anyone smile." That evening, Marcus's pristine kitchen became a wonderland of flour clouds and tomato sauce splatters. Sophie stood on a step stool, seriously instructing him on the proper ratio of cheese to sauce. Her face scrunched, in concentration just like Sarah's used to. As they worked, she shared more stories about her mother, each one filling in pieces of the years Marcus had missed. "Mom worked at the children's library," Sophie said, carefully spreading sauce in concentric circles. "She would do all the voices for story time, and sometimes she'd bring home new books for us to read together. She said books were like having 1,000 friends in your pocket." Marcus remembered Sarah's passion for literature, how she'd always carried a novel in her backpack during high school. "Your mom used to read to me too sometimes," he found himself sharing. "When things were tough at home, I'd go to her house and she'd read whatever she was currently enjoying. It always made everything better." Sophie's eyes lit up at this. A new connection to her mother. "Did she read you The Secret Garden? That was our favorite. She said it was about how love can make broken things grow again." The metaphor wasn't lost on Marcus. Looking around his formerly sterile kitchen, now alive with warmth and activity, he realized that's exactly what was happening here. Sarah's daughter was helping him rediscover parts of himself he'd thought were lost forever. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Marcus sat in his office reviewing the preliminary paperwork his lawyer had sent over regarding temporary guardianship. The legal documents were straightforward, but they represented a commitment that would fundamentally change his life. Was he ready for this responsibility? Could he really be what Sophie needed? His phone buzzed with a message from the board, chairman demanding an explanation for his recent absences and seemingly erratic behavior. Marcus stared at the screen, remembering countless nights spent chasing deals and validation through success. The message would have sent him rushing back to damage control mode just a week ago. Now he found himself composing a different kind of response, one that prioritized his newfound purpose over corporate expectations. As he typed, he could hear Sophie's soft humming drifting down the hallway, a habit she shared with Sarah, who used to hum while studying. The sound grounded him, reminding him that some choices once made become the foundation for everything that follows. He was no longer just Marcus Reynolds, billionaire CEO. He was becoming something far more important, a guardian, a protector, a person worthy of the trust a little girl had placed in him. The peaceful routine Marcus and Sophie were building was shattered one morning by an unexpected visitor. Marcus was reviewing school options for Sophie when Jennifer burst into his office, her usual composure noticeably shaken. "Mr. Reynolds, there's someone here insisting on seeing you. He says—" She hesitated, glancing toward the conference room where Sophie was working on her drawings. "He says he's Sophie's father." Marcus felt his blood run cold. He had known this moment might come, but he hadn't expected it so soon. Where is he? In the lobby. Security is with him. His name is James Connor. The name triggered a distant memory. Sarah had mentioned him once during their last conversation years ago, her voice tinged with disappointment and worry. Marcus straightened his tie, a habitual gesture that now felt like armor. "Keep Sophie occupied," he instructed Jennifer. "I'll handle this." In the lobby, Marcus found himself face to face with a man who bore little resemblance to Sophie. James Connor was impeccably dressed, but there was something calculated in his smile that set Marcus's nerves on edge. "Mr. Reynolds," Connor extended his hand, which Marcus reluctantly shook. "I understand you've been looking after my daughter. I'm here to take her home." "Where have you been for the past 8 years?" Marcus kept his voice level, but there was steel beneath the words. Connor's smile didn't waver. "I've been establishing myself, building a successful life. Now I'm ready to be the father Sophie deserves. I have my rights, Mr. Reynolds, and I intend to exercise them." "Rights you abandoned when you left Sarah to raise Sophie alone?" Marcus couldn't keep the edge from his voice. "Where were you when they needed you?" "People change," Connor replied smoothly. "I've changed, and I've recently learned about certain financial arrangements Sarah made before her passing. As Sophie's biological father, I have a responsibility to manage those affairs." The true motivation became clear. Marcus thought of the trust fund Sarah had apparently set up for Sophie, money that would have come from her family's modest savings and life insurance. Connor wasn't here for Sophie. He was here for whatever he could gain from claiming her. "I have some of the best lawyers in New York," Marcus stated quietly. "If you're planning what I think you're planning, you should know I will fight you with everything I have." Connor's pleasant facade cracked slightly. "You're not family, Reynolds. You're just some rich guy playing hero. Do you really think you can give Sophie what she needs? The stability of a real father?" Before Marcus could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "Mr. Marcus." Sophie stood in the doorway, Jennifer hovering anxiously behind her. The little girl's eyes darted between the two men, widening as she recognized Connor. "Sophie," Connor's voice changed, becoming artificially warm. "Sweetheart, do you remember me? I'm your daddy." Sophie took a step backward, pressing closer to Jennifer. "Mom said you went away and weren't coming back. She said sometimes people make choices that can't be fixed." The raw hurt in Sophie's voice made Marcus's heart ache. He wanted to shield her from this moment, but he knew she needed to face it on her terms. Connor moved toward Sophie, but she quickly circled around him, running to Marcus's side and gripping his hand. "I don't want to go with him," she whispered, trembling slightly. "Please don't make me go." Marcus squeezed her hand reassuringly, then faced Connor with newfound resolve. "I think you should leave now. Any further communication can go through my lawyers." Connor's pleasant mask slipped completely, revealing something harder underneath. "This isn't over, Reynolds. That girl is my ticket to what's rightfully mine, and no amount of your money can change that." As security escorted Connor out, Marcus felt Sophie's grip on his hand tighten. He knelt down to her level, seeing the fear and confusion in her eyes. "Sophie, I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you. We're going to figure this out together." She nodded, her chin set in a determined expression that was pure Sarah. Mom always said that family is about love, not just blood, and she said that sometimes the best families are the ones we choose for ourselves. Looking at this brave little girl who had already faced so much, Marcus made a silent vow. He would become the guardian she deserved, not just legally, but in every way that mattered. Connor's appearance had made one thing crystal clear. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it was absolutely necessary. In the wake of James Connor's appearance, Marcus's penthouse transformed into a fortress of legal preparation. His team of lawyers worked tirelessly, gathering documentation and building a case for permanent guardianship. But while the adults around her buzzed with activity, Sophie retreated into a quiet world of her own, her vibrant personality dimming like a light behind clouds. One evening, Marcus found her sitting in the window seat of her room, hugging her knees to her chest and staring out at the city lights. The sight reminded him so strongly of Sarah during their teenage years, when she would perch in her bedroom window, dreaming of the future. "Want some company?" he asked softly, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate topped with extra marshmallows, a tradition they'd established in their short time together. Sophie nodded without turning, making space for him on the window seat. They sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the city twinkle below them. "Mr. Marcus," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper, "did my mom ever talk about him? About James?" Marcus considered his words carefully. "She mentioned him once, the last time we spoke. She said she wanted to protect you from disappointment." Sophie traced patterns in the condensation on her mug. "I used to imagine him coming back when I was little. Mum would find me waiting by the window sometimes, and she'd say that some people are like shooting stars, beautiful but not meant to stay. She said we had to make our own constellations with the stars that chose to shine with us." The wisdom in Sarah's words struck Marcus deeply. He remembered her ability to find beauty, even in painful truths, to transform hurt into healing. "Your mom was very wise," he said softly. "She also said that sometimes the best things in life come as surprises," Sophie continued, finally turning to look at him. "Like you. You're a surprise star in my constellation now, aren't you?" Marcus felt, his throat tighten with emotion. "I'd like to be if you'll have me." The next morning brought a new challenge. Marcus's board of directors had called an emergency meeting to address his concerning behavior and shifting priorities. He stood before them in the same conference room where he'd made countless presentations about market growth and profit margins, but this time his presentation was different. "I understand your concerns," he began, his voice steady and confident, "but I'm not stepping back from my responsibilities. I'm expanding them. What's happening with Sophie has shown me opportunities we've been missing. Our company has the resources to make real changes in children's lives." He outlined his vision, a foundation dedicated to supporting children in situations like Sophie's, providing educational opportunities and stable environments. It wasn't just about Sophie anymore. She had opened his eyes to a larger purpose. The board members exchanged glances, some skeptical, others intrigued. Marcus continued, his passion evident in every word. "We've built our success on innovation and taking calculated risks. This is both a chance to innovate in social responsibility while creating long-term value for our stakeholders." Back at home that evening, Marcus found Sophie and Jennifer in the kitchen, surrounded by cookbooks and baking supplies. Sophie's face was smudged with flour, but her eyes were brighter than they'd been in days. "We're making Mum's special comfort cookies," she announced. "She always said baking was like magic. You put love into the ingredients, and it comes out as something that makes people happy." As they worked together, Sophie shared more memories of Sarah, each one a precious gift. She told him about their Saturday morning dance parties, their secret language of silly faces, and the special ways Sarah would tuck her in at night, creating stories about guardian angels who watched over brave little girls. Marcus listened, memorizing each detail, understanding that these stories were more than memories. They were the building blocks of Sophie's resilience. Each shared moment seemed to strengthen her, helping her stand taller against the shadows of uncertainty that James Connor had cast. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Marcus received an email from his legal team. They had uncovered concerning information about Connor's past, a history of failed businesses, abandoned responsibilities, and questionable financial dealings. The evidence would help their case, but it also confirmed Marcus's worst fears about Connor's true intentions. Sitting in his office, surrounded by the scent of freshly baked cookies and the echoes of Sophie's laughter, Marcus made another decision. He would not just fight for Sophie's guardianship, he would fight to give her the kind of life Sarah had dreamed of for her daughter. A life filled with love, security, and the freedom to become whoever she was meant to be. The courthouse loomed before them, its stone facade imposing in the morning light. Marcus held Sophie's hand as they climbed the steps, her new dress rustling with each movement. She had insisted on wearing the blue one, saying it matched the color of hope. Inside in the waiting area, they were surprised to find familiar faces. Jennifer was there, of course, but so were several of Marcus's employees, including his entire executive team. They had come to show support, many of them carrying small gifts for Sophie, books, stuffed animals, and hand-drawn cards from their own children. "We're all behind you, boss," his CFO said quietly. "Some battles are worth more than quarterly reports." Before Marcus could respond, another figure approached, an elderly woman he didn't recognize. Sophie's face lit up. "Mrs. Martinez," she exclaimed, rushing to hug the woman who had been her neighbor and occasional caretaker. "Mi pequeña Sophie," Mrs. Martinez embraced her warmly before turning to Marcus. "I came as soon as I heard about the hearing. That man, Connor, he used to come around sometimes, always asking about money, never about Sophie. I have stories to tell if they will help." More people arrived, Sarah's former colleagues from the library, bringing testimonials about her dedication to Sophie. Teachers from Sophie's old school, armed with records of Connor's absence from parent-teacher conferences and school events. Even the owner of the small cafe where Sarah had worked part-time, carrying years of observations about a mother's devotion and a father's neglect. Connor arrived with his lawyer, his confident smirk faltering slightly at the sight of the gathered crowd. He tried to approach Sophie, but she pressed closer to Marcus, drawing strength from the wall of supporters around her. Inside the courtroom, the judge listened carefully as both sides presented their cases. Connor's lawyer painted a picture of a reformed father seeking redemption, while Marcus's team methodically presented evidence of Connor's true character and motives. Mrs. Martinez's testimony about Connor's previous attempts to exploit Sarah's modest savings was particularly damaging. During a break in proceedings, Sophie tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Can I show the judge something?" she asked, pulling a worn notebook from her small backpack. The notebook, it turned out, was Sarah's diary, filled with entries about her hopes for Sophie's future and her fears about Connor's influence. Sophie had found it while packing her things from the old apartment. The judge accepted it as evidence, and as Marcus's lawyer read selected entries aloud, Connor's facade of paternal concern crumbled visibly. "I want what's best for Sophie," he finally admitted under cross-examination. "And if that means, if there's a financial settlement that could be arranged." The judge's expression hardened at this revelation of his true motives. Before she could respond, Sophie stood up. "I want to say something," she announced, her voice small but clear in the hushed courtroom. "My mom always told me that love isn't about what you can get. It's about what you can give. Mr. Marcus gives me love, safety, and a home. He helps me remember Mom in happy ways. He's teaching me that family can grow from kindness, not just blood." The courtroom fell silent as Sophie's words hung in the air. Marcus felt tears pricking at his eyes, matching those he saw in the eyes of Jennifer and others in the gallery. Even the judge seemed moved by the simple wisdom in Sophie's statement. That evening, as they waited for the judge's decision, Marcus hosted an impromptu gathering in his penthouse. The space was filled with their supporters, each person representing a thread in the unexpected tapestry of care that had woven itself around Sophie. Mrs. Martinez taught everyone how to make her famous empanadas, filling the kitchen with warm spices and laughter. Sophie flitted between groups, showing off her growing collection of books and art supplies, her earlier anxiety replaced by the security of knowing she was surrounded by people who truly cared about her well-being. As Marcus watched her, he realized that this was what Sarah had always understood, that true wealth wasn't measured in bank accounts or business successes, but in the connections we forge and the love we share. The company he had built seemed less important now compared to the community that had built itself around this remarkable little girl. Jennifer appeared at his side, holding out a phone. "The judge's office," she said softly. "They've reached a decision." Marcus took the phone, his heart pounding. As he listened to the court clerk's words, he felt the weight of the past weeks lifting from his shoulders. Looking at Sophie, surrounded by her newfound family of choice, he knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The judge's decision in favor of Marcus's guardianship marked not an ending, but a beginning. As summer turned to autumn, The penthouse underwent a transformation that mirrored the changes in its inhabitants' lives. Sophie's room, once a stark guest space, bloomed with personality. Walls painted in soft lavender, twinkling fairy lights strung across the ceiling, and a reading nook filled with pillows and beloved books. Marcus found himself learning to navigate previously uncharted territories. Parent-teacher conferences, piano lessons, and the intricate social politics of 8-year-old friendships became as important as board meetings and quarterly reports. His calendar, once dominated by business appointments, now featured events like Sophie's art show and daddy-daughter dance class in Jennifer's neat handwriting. One crisp September morning, as Marcus helped Sophie prepare for school, she paused while tying her shoes. "Mr. Marcus," she began, her voice thoughtful, "can I ask you something important?" "Of course," he replied, noting the serious expression on her face. The one that always reminded him of Sarah. "Well," Sophie continued, carefully choosing her words, "at school when other kids talk about their families, they say, 'my dad' or 'my mum.' But I don't know what to call you. You're not just Mr. Marcus. Any more, are you?" The question caught Marcus off guard, his heart skipping a beat. Before he could respond, Sophie pressed on, her words tumbling out faster now. "Because you make me feel safe like Mom did. You check for monsters under my bed and know exactly how I like my sandwich cut. You help me remember Mom in happy ways, and you never get mad when I cry about missing her. That's what dads are supposed to do, right?" Marcus knelt down to her, level, his throat tight with emotion. "Sophie, you can call me whatever feels right to you. I'm here as long as you want me to be, no matter what name you choose." She studied his face with an intensity that belied her years. I think I'd like to call you Dad, not because I'm forgetting Mom or because you're replacing anyone, but because you chose to be my dad when you didn't have to." The simplicity and depth of her understanding brought tears to Marcus's eyes. He pulled her into a gentle hug, feeling her small arms wrapped tightly around his neck. "I'd be honored," he whispered. That evening, they celebrated their new official status as father and daughter with a special dinner. Jennifer had helped Sophie prepare Sarah's famous spaghetti recipe, and Mrs. Martinez brought her legendary tres leches cake. The penthouse filled with the warmth of family, not the kind bound by blood, but the kind forged through choice and love. As they sat around the dinner table, Sophie shared stories about her day at school, her face animated with excitement about an upcoming science project. Marcus found himself storing away every detail, every gesture, every laugh. He thought about how different his life had been just months ago, when success was measured in stock prices and market shares. Later, as he tucked Sophie into bed, she pulled out Sarah's old diary from under her pillow. "Can we read some of Mum's stories?" she asked, a nightly ritual they had developed. "I like hearing her words in your voice. It's like having both of you here." Marcus settled into the reading chair beside her bed, opening the diary to where they had left off the night before. Sarah's words flowed through him, her hopes and dreams for Sophie preserved in ink, now being realized in ways she might never have imagined. "Dad?" Sophie's sleepy voice interrupted his reading. The word, still new and precious, made his heart swell. "Do you think Mum would be happy about us being a family?" Marcus thought about Sarah, her compassion, her belief in second chances, her ability to see the best in people. "Yes, sweetheart," he replied softly. "I think she would be very happy. She always knew that love could build bridges between hearts, even when the path wasn't clear." As Sophie drifted off to sleep, Marcus remained in the chair, watching the gentle rise and fall of her chest. On her bedside table, a framed photograph showed Sarah holding a younger Sophie, both of them laughing at some forgotten joke. Next to it stood a newer picture, Sophie and Marcus at the courthouse on the day of the guardianship ruling, their smiles reflecting the joy of their newfound family. The two images side by side told a story of loss and discovery, of endings and beginnings, of a love that transcended traditional boundaries of family. Marcus realized that in helping Sophie heal, he had found his own healing. In becoming her father, he had rediscovered parts of himself that had been buried under years of corporate success and emotional isolation. The breakthrough came on a rainy Saturday afternoon as Marcus and Sophie sorted through boxes from Sarah's old apartment. Mrs. Martinez had been storing them in her spare room, carefully preserving the memories they contained. Each item they unpacked was like a piece of a puzzle, revealing more about the life Sarah had built for her daughter. "Look at this," Sophie exclaimed, pulling out a handmade scrapbook. The cover was decorated with pressed flowers and Sophie's name in Sarah's elegant handwriting. Inside they found not just photographs but ticket stubs, drawings, and small notes documenting Sophie's early years. As they turned the pages together, Marcus noticed something unusual: several envelopes, tucked into the back cover, each labeled with a specific date. The first was marked, "For Sophie's 9th birthday." Sophie's hands trembled slightly as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Sarah's familiar script, along with a small key attached to a purple ribbon. "Dear Sophie," Marcus read. Aloud, his voice gentle. "If you're reading this, you've reached your 9th birthday and I'm so proud of the girl you're becoming. There's something special I've been saving for. You're a treasure hunt that will help you understand more about our family's story. The key you found opens the first door to this adventure. Look for the purple butterfly at the library where I used to work. That's where your journey begins." Sophie's eyes sparkled with excitement and tears. "Mom made a treasure hunt for me? Can we go to the library now, please, Dad?" The word Dad still sent a warm flutter through Marcus's heart. "Of course we can. Let me just call Jennifer to reschedule." "My afternoon meetings." The library was quiet when they arrived, but the elderly librarian's face lit up with recognition when she saw Sophie. "Oh, my dear. Sarah told me this day would come." She led them to a small office in the back, pointing to a wooden cabinet with a painted purple butterfly on its door. The key fit perfectly. Inside, they found another envelope and a small box containing a charm bracelet. The note explained that each charm represented a special memory or lesson Sarah wanted to share with Sophie. "The first charm is a book," Sophie observed, holding it up to the light. "Mom always said books were magic because they could take you anywhere." The afternoon turned into an adventure as they followed Sarah's carefully planned trail across the city. Each location held a new letter, a new charm, and a new story. They visited the park where Sarah had taught Sophie to ride a bike, the ice cream shop where they celebrated every report card, and the community center where they had taken art classes together. At each stop, they met people who had been part of Sarah's life, friends, colleagues, and neighbors who shared their own memories and messages of love. Marcus watched in amazement as the puzzle of Sarah's life came together, revealing the intricate web of relationships she had woven to ensure Sophie would always be surrounded by care. The final envelope led them to Mrs. Martinez's apartment. The elderly woman was waiting with tears in her eyes and a small wooden chest that Sarah had entrusted to her. Inside were more letters, dated for future birthdays, graduation, and other milestones in Sophie's life. "Your mother wanted to be part of every important moment," Mrs. Martinez explained, hugging Sophie close. "She knew she might not be here in person, but she found a way to share her wisdom and love with you." As they drove home that evening, the charm bracelet jingling softly on Sophie's wrist, Marcus felt a profound sense of gratitude. Sarah hadn't just left behind memories. She had created a legacy of love that would continue to guide and support Sophie as she grew. "Dad?" Sophie's voice was thoughtful in the gathering dusk. "Do you think we could add new charms to the bracelet? For the memories we're making together." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror, seeing both Sarah's strength and her own unique spirit in her face. "I think that's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. Your mom understood that love grows and changes. She'd want you to keep adding to your story." Back at the penthouse, Sophie carefully arranged her new treasures on her dresser: the bracelet, the letters, and the photographs they had discovered. Each item was a thread connecting past to present, weaving together the fabric of their unconventional family. As Marcus helped her organize everything, he noticed one more envelope, this one addressed to him. His hands shook slightly as he opened it, recognizing Sarah's handwriting once again. Marcus sat in his office long after Sophie had gone to bed, Sarah's letter spread out before him. The paper held the faint scent of the vanilla perfume she used to wear, a detail that brought back a flood of memories from their shared past. "Dear Marcus," the letter began, "if you're reading this, it means you've found your way back to Sophie, and more importantly, she's found her way to you. I always knew our paths would cross again, though I never imagined it would happen like this." His hands trembled slightly as he continued reading. Sarah's words painted a picture of her life after they'd lost touch, her struggles, her triumphs, and, most importantly, her unwavering faith in the goodness of people, even when life tested that faith. "I've watched you from afar," she wrote, "seeing your success in the business world, reading about your achievements. But I always remembered the Marcus I knew in high school, the one who would spend hours helping younger students with their math homework, who would share his lunch with kids who had none. That Marcus had a heart bigger than his ambitions. I see now that he never really went away." Jennifer knocked softly on the door, entering with 2 cups of tea. She had stayed late, helping to organize the treasures they'd found during the day's adventure. "You look like you could use this," she said, placing 1 cup on his desk. "Did you know," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, "that Sarah kept every newspaper article about our company's success? She believed in me even when I'd forgotten to believe in myself." Jennifer sat down, her usual professional demeanor softening. "She sounds like someone who saw the best in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves." Marcus nodded, continuing to read aloud from the letter. "I'm not writing this to burden you with guilt or regret. Life takes us down unexpected paths, and sometimes those paths lead us exactly where we need to be, even if we don't recognize it at first. Sophie has a way of helping people rediscover their true selves. She did it for me every day." The letter went on to share Sarah's hopes for Sophie's future, not just the milestones she might achieve, but the kind of person she might become. She wrote about Sophie's compassionate heart, her creative spirit, and her ability to find joy in simple moments. "There's something else you should know," Sarah's letter continued. "I've left instructions with my lawyer about Sophie's trust fund. It's not much by your standards, but it represents years of careful saving and planning. I've designated you as the trustee, not because of your financial expertise, though that's certainly a bonus, but because I trust you to understand that true wealth isn't measured in dollars." Marcus paused, remembering Connor's greedy interest in Sophie's inheritance. Sarah had known somehow that the money might attract the wrong kind of attention. She had planned for every contingency, protecting Sophie even now. "The real treasure," Sarah wrote, "isn't in any bank account. It's in the collection of letters, memories, and lessons I've tried to leave for Sophie. Each one is a piece of my heart, a way to be present for the moments I'll miss. But she'll need more than memories. She'll need living, breathing love. To help her grow, that's where you come in, Marcus." Jennifer quietly excused herself, leaving Marcus alone with the final paragraphs of Sarah's letter. "I've watched Sophie's face light up whenever she sees skyscrapers, and I've heard her tell her stuffed animals about the tall buildings where important people work. Somehow, she's always been drawn to the world you inhabit. Perhaps she sensed that your paths would cross, that you would be the one to help her bridge the gap between the life she's known and the life she's meant to live." The letter's conclusion brought tears to Marcus's eyes. "Take care of our girl, Marcus. Not because you owe me anything, but because I know that in caring for her, you'll rediscover the best parts of yourself. Sophie has a gift for healing hearts, even ones that have forgotten they were broken. Let her remind you of who you've always been meant to be. P.S. Check the bottom drawer of my old desk at the library. There's one more surprise waiting there, something I think you both need to see." Marcus glanced at his watch, nearly midnight. The library was closed and the revelation would have to wait until morning. But sleep felt impossible now, his mind racing with memories and possibilities. He walked quietly to Sophie's room, watching her peaceful sleep. The charm bracelet glinted on her bedside table, each charm catching the soft light from her night lamp. Sarah had known somehow that this moment would come, that her daughter would find not just a guardian, but a father, and that in the process, he would find the piece of himself that had been missing all along. The next morning, Marcus and Sophie arrived at the library as soon as it opened. The elderly librarian, Miss Patterson, was already waiting for them, a knowing smile on her face as she led them to Sarah's old desk in the children's section. "She told me this day would come," Miss Patterson said, pulling out a ring of keys. "Sarah spent countless hours at this desk, you know. Even when she was tired from working her second job, she'd sit here creating story times that would transport children to magical worlds." The bottom drawer opened with a gentle creak, revealing a leather-bound album and a sealed envelope. Sophie's hands shook slightly as she lifted them out, looking to Marcus for reassurance. "Together," he suggested, and she nodded. The album contained photographs none of them had seen before, images from their high school years, showing Marcus and Sarah in various scenes of friendship. There they were at debate club, science fairs, and school plays. Each photo was accompanied by Sarah's handwritten notes, describing not just the moment captured, but the dreams and plans they had shared. "Look at this one," Sophie exclaimed, pointing to a picture of Marcus and Sarah sitting on the library steps surrounded by books. "Mum's wearing the same butterfly necklace she gave me for my last birthday." Marcus remembered that day clearly now. They had been studying for finals, but ended up spending hours discussing their hopes for the future. Sarah had wanted to become a librarian, to share her love of stories with children. He had dreamed of building something meaningful, though back then he hadn't known exactly what that would be. The final pages of the album shifted to more recent photos. Sophie, as a baby, taking her first steps, starting school. There were empty pages too, labeled with future dates and events, waiting to be filled with new memories. The sealed envelope contained one last letter, this one addressed to both of them. Marcus read it aloud, his voice steady despite the emotion tightening his throat. "My dearest Sophie and Marcus, if you're reading this together, then my greatest hope has been realized. Sophie, my brave girl, you've found someone who can love you as fiercely as I do, who can help you grow into the amazing person you're meant to be. And Marcus, my dear friend, you found your way back to the part of yourself that always put people before profits, heart before success." There's something magical about the way life brings people together, isn't it? Like characters in different stories suddenly finding themselves in the same book, creating a new tale altogether. "Sophie, remember how we used to make up stories about the people we saw from our apartment window? We'd imagine their lives, their dreams, their adventures. Now you're living an adventure I couldn't have imagined for you, but one that feels absolutely right. Marcus, do you remember that day in high school when we made a pact to change the world? You wanted to build towers that would touch the sky, and I wanted to build bridges between hearts. Looking at you both now, I see that sometimes the greatest changes come not from grand gestures, but from simple acts of love." I've left space in this album for the story you'll write together. Fill it with laughter, with learning, with all the small moments that make a family. Sophie, help Marcus remember how to see the world through a child's eyes, with wonder, curiosity, and endless possibility. And Marcus, show Sophie how to turn dreams into reality, how to stand tall even when the world feels too big. Most importantly, remember that love isn't diminished by sharing it. It only grows stronger. The love I have for both of you isn't bound by time or distance. It lives in every page of this album, every charm on Sophie's bracelet, every story you'll share. Take care of each other, learn from each other, and know that somewhere I'm smiling, watching my two favorite people become the family I always knew you could be. With all my love, Sarah. Miss Patterson quietly excused herself, leaving them alone with their emotions. Sophie climbed into Marcus's lap just as she had that first day on the park bench, and together they began looking through the album again, this time sharing their own stories, their own memories. "Dad," Sophie said softly, running her fingers over a blank page in the album, "can we start filling these pages today? I want to remember everything." Marcus hugged her close, feeling the weight of Sarah's trust, the joy of Sophie's love, and the certainty that this was exactly where he was meant to be. "Yes, sweetheart. We'll fill them with our own adventures, our own magic." In the quiet of the library, surrounded by books and memories, father and daughter began planning their next chapter together. The autumn days grew shorter, but life in the penthouse had never felt fuller. Marcus discovered that running a billion-dollar company was, in many ways, simpler than helping with fourth-grade math homework or navigating the complexities of preteen friendships. Yet he found himself cherishing these new challenges, each one bringing him closer to the father he wanted to be. One particular Wednesday afternoon, Marcus left an important investor meeting early to attend Sophie's first piano recital. As he slipped into the school auditorium, he caught sight of her peeking through the stage curtains, her face lighting up when she spotted him in the audience. She was wearing the butterfly hair clips that had been among Sarah's treasures, and her fingers nervously played with the charm bracelet that hadn't left her wrist since they'd found it. Jennifer, sitting beside him with her tablet full of rescheduled appointments, leaned over to whisper, "The Tokyo investors can wait. This is more important." When Sophie took her place at the piano, her initial nervousness melted away as she began to play. The melody was one Sarah had often hummed while working at the library, a lullaby she had sung to Sophie as a baby. Marcus recognized it from one of the recordings they'd found in Sarah's memory box. After the recital, as other parents congratulated their children, Sophie ran to Marcus with tears in her eyes. "I messed up in the middle part," she confessed, burying her face in his suit jacket. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling to her level, "want to know something? When I gave my first business presentation, I was so nervous I dropped all my papers. But you know what made it okay? I picked them up and kept going, just like you did today. That's what matters most, not giving up." Sophie's face brightened slightly. "Really? You got nervous too?" "Still do, sometimes. But having you in my life has taught me that it's okay to not be perfect. It's the trying that counts." That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner, breakfast for dinner, a tradition Sarah had started for important occasions. As they made pancakes together, Sophie perched on her kitchen stool. Marcus noticed how she'd begun to mirror some of his mannerisms, the way she furrowed her brow when concentrating, how she organized her plate just so. "Dad?" she asked, carefully flipping a pancake. "Can I ask you something important?" "Always," he replied, noting the serious tone in her voice. "Well, Lily from my class is having a mother-daughter tea party next weekend. She said I could come, but—" Sophie's voice trailed off, her eyes fixed on the pancake. Marcus felt his heart squeeze. These moments still caught him off guard, the sudden reminders of Sarah's absence, the challenges of helping Sophie navigate her grief while dealing with his own complex emotions. "Mrs. Martinez offered to go with me," Sophie continued quickly. "But I was thinking, maybe we could do something different instead. Something that's just ours." "What did you have in mind?" Marcus asked, already knowing he would move heaven and earth to make it happen. "Could we maybe have our own tea party? Here at home? We could invite Jennifer and Mrs. Martinez and Ms. Patterson from the library, and we could use Mom's special teacups, the ones with the butterflies that we found in her things. It wouldn't be a mother-daughter tea party, but it would be a family tea party," Marcus finished for her, understanding exactly what she needed. "And we could make it a regular thing if you want. Every month we could celebrate our unique kind of family." Sophie's face lit up with the kind of joy that made his heart feel too big for his chest. "Could we use Mom's recipe box, the one with all her special cookies?" "Of course. And maybe we could add our own recipes too. Start some new traditions while keeping the old ones." As they continued making pancakes, Sophie chattering excitedly about their upcoming tea party, Marcus marveled at how naturally they had learned to blend their past and present. Sarah's memory wasn't a shadow over their happiness. It was a foundation they built upon, a source of strength rather than sadness. Later that night, after Sophie had gone to bed, Marcus found himself in his home office, looking through the family album they'd been filling with new photos. Next to a picture of Sophie's piano recital, He placed a dried flower from Sarah's memory box, a pressed violet she had saved from their high school graduation. The past and present overlapped in these pages, telling a story of loss and discovery, of endings and beginnings. But most importantly, it told a story of growth, how two hearts wounded by different kinds of pain had found healing in their unlikely connection. The first family tea party exceeded all expectations. The penthouse filled with the aroma of freshly baked cookies made from Sarah's recipes, and Sophie had decorated the dining room with paper butterflies she'd crafted herself. Jennifer arrived early to help set up, bringing along her famous cucumber sandwiches, while Mrs. Martinez contributed her signature empanadas. What no one expected was the additional guest who arrived just as they were sitting down to tea. Ms. Patterson from the library appeared with a surprise, a young girl about Sophie's age, clutching a worn copy of The Secret Garden. "This is Lucy," Ms. Patterson explained quietly to Marcus. "She's been staying at the children's home near the library. When she heard about Sophie's story during our reading circle, she asked if she could meet her." Sophie, displaying the same intuitive kindness that had been Sarah's hallmark, immediately made space at the table for Lucy. "Do you like butterflies, too?" she asked, offering the newcomer one of her paper creations. As the adults watched, the two girls formed an instant connection. Lucy, they learned, had been in foster care for the past year. Like Sophie, she found solace in books and carried her own quiet storms behind bright eyes. Later that evening, after the guests had gone home and Sophie was getting ready for bed, she approached Marcus with that particular expression that meant she'd been thinking deeply about something. "Dad," she began, twisting her charm bracelet, a habit she'd developed when tackling difficult subjects. "Remember how Mom's letters said we should keep adding to our family story?" Marcus nodded, already sensing where this might be going. "Well, I was thinking about Lucy. She doesn't have anyone to read her bedtime stories or check for monsters under her bed, and she loves books just like Mom did." Sophie paused, gathering her courage. "Could we maybe help her? Not exactly like you helped me, but something?" The request stirred something in Marcus's heart. He thought about Sarah's words in her letter, about how love grows stronger when shared. An idea began to form, one that would honor both Sarah's memory and Sophie's compassionate spirit. The next morning, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. The executives gathered, expecting crisis management or market strategy discussions. Instead, they found their CEO presenting a very different kind of proposal. "Gentlemen, ladies," Marcus began, "we've built this company on innovation and forward thinking. Today, I want to propose our most ambitious project yet, the Sarah Thompson Foundation." He outlined his vision, a foundation dedicated to supporting children in the foster care system, with a special focus on education and literacy programs. The initial project would be a reading room program in children's homes and foster care facilities, each one stocked with carefully chosen books and staffed by volunteer readers. "But this isn't just about donations," Marcus explained. "It's about connection. Each reading room will be a space where children can find not just stories but understanding, where they can learn that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who chooses to be there for you." The board members exchanged glances, but something had changed since their last emergency meeting months ago. They had witnessed Marcus's transformation, seen how his newfound purpose had actually improved his leadership. The quarterly reports showed that his more compassionate approach to business had increased both employee satisfaction and productivity. As the meeting concluded with unanimous approval, Jennifer appeared at the door with Sophie in tow. School had ended early, and she had brought Sophie straight to the office as requested. "How would you like to help design the first reading room?" Marcus asked his daughter. "Maybe we could start with the children's home where Lucy stays." Sophie's face lit up with excitement, but then turned serious. "Can we make it butterfly-themed like Mom's special reading corner at the library?" "I think that's perfect," Marcus replied, watching as Sophie immediately began sketching ideas on his notepad. "And maybe we could ask Mrs. Martinez to bake cookies for the opening day, just like she did for story time with your mom." As father, and daughter sat together in the corporate boardroom, planning ways to share their good fortune with others, Marcus felt Sarah's presence more strongly than ever. She had always believed in the ripple effect of kindness, how one act of love could spread outward, touching lives in unexpected ways. He looked at Sophie, now deep in discussion with Jennifer about proper bookshelf heights for different age groups, and saw both Sarah's compassion and his own drive for excellence blending into something new and wonderful. They were more than just a family now. They were becoming catalysts for change, turning their own story of healing into hope for others. The first Sarah Thompson reading room opened on a crisp winter morning. The previously stark common room at the children's home had been transformed into a warm, welcoming space filled with comfortable reading nooks, cozy beanbags, and, at Sophie's insistence, delicate paper butterflies dancing from the ceiling. Lucy stood beside Sophie during the ribbon-cutting ceremony, both girls wearing matching butterfly clips in their hair. In the months since the tea party, they had become inseparable friends, their bond strengthened by shared experiences and understanding. The two girls had spent countless hours together, helping to select books and arrange the reading spaces just right. "My mum would have loved this," Sophie whispered to Lucy, as they watched the younger children explore the room for the first time. "She always said books were like friends that never let you down." Marcus, standing nearby, overheard the exchange and felt his heart swell with pride. He watched as Sophie led a group of smaller children to the picture book section, settling into one of the reading chairs with the same gentle authority Sarah had once shown during library story times. "You've done something remarkable here," Ms. Patterson said, appearing at his side. "Sarah would be proud, not just of the reading room, but of how you and Sophie have grown together." The elderly librarian's eyes misted as she surveyed the room. "You know, Sarah used to talk about creating spaces like this. She believed that every child deserved a safe place to dream, to imagine, to believe in possibilities." As if to prove her point, a small boy who had been hovering shyly near the doorway finally gathered the courage to approach Sophie's reading circle. Without missing a beat, Sophie shifted to make room for him, her voice taking on the special tone she remembered her mother using during bedtime stories. Jennifer, who had taken personal charge of the foundation's logistics, was already documenting everything for the next reading room installation. "The contractor for the Brooklyn location says they can start next month," she reported, her tablet filled with plans and schedules, "and we've had 3 more facilities reach out about participating in the program." But Marcus was only half listening, his attention caught by something else. Through the reading room's windows, he could see snowflakes beginning to fall, the first snow of the season. He remembered Sarah's voice from one of her diary entries. "Snow makes the world quiet enough to hear your heart speak." The memory sparked an idea. "Jennifer, can you clear my schedule for the rest of the day?" His assistant smiled knowingly, already typing on her tablet. "Already done, sir. I had a feeling you might want to spend this afternoon with Sophie." Mandy tea. The opening ceremony wound down. Marcus gathered Sophie and Lucy. "What do you say we continue this celebration? There's a special place I'd like to show you both." 20 minutes later, their car pulled up in front of an old brownstone building. Sophie's eyes widened in recognition. It was her old neighborhood, the place where she and Sarah had lived. But instead of feeling sad, she seemed curious, especially when Marcus led them to a small cafe on the corner. "Your mom and I used to come here to study," he explained, opening the door to reveal a cozy interior that hadn't changed much in 20 years. "She always said they made the best hot chocolate in New York." The cafe owner, an elderly woman named Rosa, looked up as they entered. Her face broke into a warm smile of recognition. "Marcus Reynolds? Sarah's friend? She always said you'd find your way back here someday." Rosa disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a tray bearing 3 steaming mugs of hot chocolate, each topped with a precise arrangement of miniature marshmallows in the shape of a butterfly. "Sarah's special order," she explained with a wink. "I've been waiting to serve it again." As they settled into a booth by the window, watching the snow fall outside, Sophie and Lucy sipped their hot chocolate and listened, as Marcus shared stories about the afternoons he and Sarah had spent in this very cafe, planning their futures and sharing their dreams. "Your mum had a theory," he told Sophie, "that the best friendships were built over hot chocolate and good conversations. She said the warmth of the drink helped open up your heart to new possibilities." Lucy, who had been quietly absorbing everything, spoke up. Do you think she would have liked me being here too?" Sophie answered before Marcus could, taking her friend's hand. "Mom would have loved it. She always said that the best families are the ones that keep growing, like gardens where there's always room for one more flower to bloom." Marcus watched the two girls, their heads bent together as they continued to talk, their hot chocolate creating matching mustaches above their smiles. In that moment, he understood something profound about Sarah's legacy. It wasn't just about preserving memories or fulfilling promises. It was about creating new connections, building bridges between hearts that might otherwise have remained separate. The weeks following the reading room's opening brought unexpected changes to the Reynolds household. Lucy became a frequent visitor, spending weekends and after-school hours in the penthouse. The once quiet space now regularly echoed with the sound of two young girls giggling over books, crafting elaborate stories, and planning adventures. Marcus found himself adapting to this new dynamic with surprising ease. He set up a second desk in Sophie's study area, making sure Lucy had her own space for homework and reading. The refrigerator gained another collection of artwork, and the guest room gradually accumulated its own set of butterfly decorations. One evening, as he helped the girls with their science project, a detailed model of the solar system made entirely of recycled materials, Marcus received an unexpected call from Lucy's social worker. "Mr. Reynolds," she began, her voice carrying a note of concern, "I wanted to discuss Lucy's situation with you. Her current foster placement is ending next month, and given her special bond with Sophie, the implications of her words hung in the air." Marcus looked at the girls, deep in concentration as they painted Neptune just the right shade of blue, and felt something shift in his heart. "I'll need to discuss this with Sophie first," he replied carefully, "but please don't make any other arrangements until we talk." That night, after Lucy had gone home and Sophie was getting ready for bed, Marcus sat on the edge of her bed, gathering his thoughts. "Sweetheart, remember how you once told me that love grows stronger when it's shared?" Sophie nodded, picking up on the serious tone in his voice. "Like Mom said in her letters, and like how having Lucy around makes us even more of a family. What would you think about making that more permanent, about Lucy coming to live with us?" Sophie's eyes widened, her hand automatically going to the charm bracelet she never took off. "You mean, like you did for me, like becoming her dad too?" "Only if you're comfortable with it," Marcus assured her quickly. "This would be a big change, and your feelings matter a lot in this decision." Sophie was quiet for a long moment, turning one of the charms on her bracelet, the book that represented Sarah's love of stories. "You know what Mom wrote in one of her letters? She said that sometimes the universe puts people in our path because they're meant to be part of our story." She looked up at Marcus, her eyes shining with a wisdom beyond her years. "I think Lucy is meant to be part of our story, Dad, and I think Mom would say yes too." The next morning, Marcus took both girls to Central Park. Their weekend tradition now expanded to include Lucy. As they walked through the snow-covered paths, he thought carefully about how to broach the subject. But Lucy spoke first, her voice small but steady. "Mr. Reynolds, Sophie told me about her mum's letters, about how she left them to help Sophie remember important things." Marcus nodded, wondering where this was leading. "I don't have any letters," Lucy continued, kicking gently at the snow. "I don't even have pictures, but I've been writing my own letters in my head, about all the good things that have happened since I met Sophie and you, about how it feels to have people who actually want to hear my stories." She pulled a slightly crumpled paper from her pocket. "I wrote this one down. Would you want to read it?" Marcus took the letter with trembling hands, Sophie pressing close to his side as he unfolded it. The careful handwriting, the earnest words, the hope contained in every line. It was like hearing Sarah's voice again. but in a different key. "Dear future me," the letter began, "I want you to remember how it felt when Sophie shared her mum's stories with you. How Mr. Reynolds always asks about your day and really listens to the answer. How it feels to have a place where people notice if you're quiet or sad or happy." The letter continued, detailing all the small moments that had made Lucy feel safe and valued over the past few months. As Marcus read, he felt Sophie's hand slip into his, squeezing gently in support. When he finished reading, he knelt down in the snow to meet Lucy's eyes. "How would you feel about having more stories to write? About becoming a permanent part of our family?" Lucy's eyes filled with tears, but her smile was brighter than the winter sun reflecting off the snow. Could I call you Dad too?" Sophie answered for him, throwing her arms around them both. "Of course you can, and we can add new charms to my bracelet, one for you and one for the day you become my sister." As they stood there in the snow, holding each other close, Marcus thought about how life's greatest gifts often come disguised as challenges. A year ago, he had been a different person, focused solely on business success and material achievement. Now here he was, building a family that defied conventional definitions, guided by the wisdom Sarah had left behind and the love that seemed to grow exponentially with each new connection. Spring arrived in New York City with a burst of cherry blossoms and new beginnings. The penthouse was in a state of joyful chaos as Marcus, Sophie, and Jennifer prepared for Lucy's arrival. The former guest room was being transformed into a space that reflected both Lucy's personality and her connection to their growing family. "Do you think we should add butterflies here too?" Sophie asked, standing in the middle of the room with paint swatches and decoration plans spread around her. "Not exactly like mine, but maybe in different colors. Mom always said butterflies were symbols of change and hope." Marcus smiled, remembering Sarah's words from one of her letters about how every ending contained the seeds of a new beginning. "What do you think, Lucy? It's your room. You should make it feel like home." Lucy, who had been quietly running, her hands over the soft new bedding, looked up with tears in her eyes. "Home," she repeated softly, as if testing the word. "I've never had my own room before." "Not really." Sophie immediately went to her friend's side, pulling something from her pocket, a small butterfly charm that matched the ones on her own bracelet. "Dad and I got this for you, so you'll always remember that you belong here now." The moment was interrupted by Jennifer's arrival, her arms full of legal documents. "Everything's ready," she announced, her usual professional demeanor softened by genuine emotion. "The adoption paperwork just needs your final signatures, Mr. Reynolds." As Marcus reviewed the documents, his eye caught an unexpected name, James Connor. There was a letter attached, formally relinquishing any claim to Sophie's trust fund and legally supporting Marcus's adoption of both girls. "He came to see me last week," Jennifer explained quietly, while the girls were distracted with room planning. He said seeing how you've cared for Sophie made him realize what real fatherhood means. He wanted to do one right thing for her." Marcus felt a complex mix of emotions, relief, gratitude, and a deeper understanding of how love could transform not just the receiver, but also the giver. He thought about his own transformation, how a chance encounter with a little girl holding a photograph had completely redirected the course of his life. That evening, they held a special family dinner to celebrate Lucy's impending arrival. Mrs. Martinez brought her famous empanadas, Miss Patterson arrived with carefully chosen books for Lucy's new collection, and even Rosa from the cafe contributed a special dessert, hot chocolate cupcakes topped with butterfly-shaped marshmallows. During dinner, Sophie stood up, holding her glass of sparkling cider with the seriousness of someone making a formal toast. "I want to say something," she announced. "Mom used to tell me that families are like gardens. They need love, care, and room to grow. She said sometimes the most beautiful flowers come from seeds you didn't even plant." She turned to Lucy, her eyes shining. "You're like that, Lucy. You and Dad both. I didn't know I needed you in my garden, but now it feels like you were always meant to be here." Lucy, overwhelmed by emotion, could only nod, but her grip on her new charm spoke volumes. Marcus watched his daughters, the word now encompassing both girls in his heart, and marveled at how naturally they had found their way to each other. After dinner, as the girls showed their guests Lucy's soon-to-be room, Marcus slipped away to his office. He took out Sarah's diary, opening it to a page he had read countless times. Sometimes I worry about Sophie's future, about all the moments I might miss. But then I remember that love has a way of finding its own path. I've planted seeds of strength and kindness in her heart, and I have to trust that they'll bloom when she needs them most. And maybe, just maybe, the universe will send her guardian, angels disguised as ordinary people, who will help her grow in ways I never could have imagined. Marcus added a new photo to their family album, Sophie and Lucy, surrounded by paint swatches and decorating plans, their heads bent together. In conspiracy, both wearing matching butterfly clips in their hair. Next to it, he placed the charm that would soon join Lucy's new bracelet, a symbol of belonging, of family, of love that grows beyond boundaries. Outside his office, he could hear the girls laughing, their voices blending with the warm conversations of their extended family. Jennifer discussing book arrangements with Ms. Patterson, Mrs. Martinez teaching Rosa her secret empanada recipe, all of them woven together in this tapestry of unexpected connections. The Sarah Thompson Foundation had grown beyond anyone's expectations, spreading its butterfly wings across the city. What had started as a single reading room had blossomed into a network of safe spaces for children in transition, each one carrying the warmth and welcome that Sarah had always created in her library corner. On a bright Saturday morning, Marcus stood in the newest reading room, watching Sophie and Lucy lead a storytelling session. The girls had developed their own style, Sophie doing all the character voices just as Sarah had done, while Lucy created impromptu sound effects that kept their young audience spellbound. "They're naturals," Jennifer observed, pausing from her documentation of the Foundation's latest success. "It's amazing how they've taken ownership of the program." Indeed, the girls had become the heart of the Foundation's mission. Their weekend story sessions had become so popular that there was now a waiting list for volunteers who wanted to be trained in their storytelling technique. More importantly, they had an intuitive understanding of their audience. Children who, like Lucy had been, were searching for their own place in the world. "Mom always said stories were like bridges," Sophie explained to a shy newcomer after the session. "They help you cross from where you are to where you want to be. That's why we have so many different kinds of books here, because everyone needs different bridges at different times." Lucy nodded in agreement, adding her own wisdom. "And sometimes the best stories are the ones we're still writing. Like mine, I didn't know my story could have such a happy middle part." Marcus smiled at her choice of words, middle rather than ending. Lucy had embraced Sarah's philosophy that every ending was just the beginning of something new. The term happy middle had become a family saying, a reminder that their story was continuously unfolding. Later that afternoon, as they prepared for their monthly family tea party, now a cherished tradition that had grown to include many of the children from the reading program, Marcus found himself reflecting on the past year's journey. The penthouse, once a showcase of his success, had transformed into a true home, filled with the organized chaos of family life. Sophie's art covered the walls, Lucy's photography projects captured their daily moments, and evidence of their shared love of books could be found in every room. Even his office had changed, the stark corporate aesthetic softened by family photos and the girls' handmade gifts. As he helped set up the butterfly-themed treats that had become their signature offering, Marcus overheard Lucy confiding in Mrs. Martinez. "Sometimes I was afraid to be too happy, you know. Like maybe if I loved my new family too much, something would go wrong. But Sophie showed me her mum's letters, the ones about how love multiplies when you share it. And she was right. The more love we add, the stronger it gets." The wisdom in Lucy's words struck Marcus deeply. He remembered his own fears when he'd first taken Sophie in, his doubts about his ability to be a father. Now, watching his daughters arrange cookies on Sarah's special plates, He understood. That parenthood wasn't about being perfect. It was about being present, about growing together through all the messy, beautiful moments of daily life. Jennifer appeared at his side, holding out a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from another children's home, this one in Boston, requesting information about starting their own reading room program. "The ripples keep spreading," she said softly. "Sarah would have loved this," Marcus replied, watching as Sophie taught some of their young guests how to fold paper butterflies. She always believed in the power of small actions to create big changes. Lucy joined them, carrying a fresh batch of hot chocolate. "Dad, Sophie and I were thinking, what if we started writing our own letters, not just for ourselves, but for all the kids who come to the reading rooms? Letters about hope and family, and how love can surprise you when you least expect it." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride and love. His daughters weren't just carrying on Sarah's legacy. They were building on it, expanding it, making it their own. Through them, Sarah's belief in the transformative power of love and stories was touching lives she had never met, creating a legacy that would continue to grow and evolve. A year had passed since that first chance encounter on the street, and the Reynolds family was preparing for a special celebration. The Sarah Thompson Foundation was unveiling its most ambitious project yet, a dedicated children's library, wing that would serve as both a reading space and a community center for families in transition. The space had been designed with input from Sophie and Lucy, incorporating elements from all the successful reading rooms while adding something new, a special corner they called the Letter Garden. Here, children could write letters to their future selves, share their stories, or express feelings they couldn't say out loud. The walls were decorated with paper butterflies, each one containing a message of hope or encouragement. "Look what we found, Dad," Sophie called out, waving an old photograph as she and Lucy burst into Marcus's home office one morning. The girls had been helping Miss Patterson organize the library's archives, a project that often yielded surprising treasures. The photograph showed Sarah as a young librarian reading to a group of children. She was wearing the butterfly necklace that Sophie now treasured, and her expression captured the same joy that both girls showed during their storytelling sessions. "There's something written on the back," Lucy pointed out, carefully turning the photograph over. In Sarah's familiar handwriting was a quote, "Every story we share becomes a seed in someone else's garden. Plant them with love, water them with hope, and watch how they grow." Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his throat that came whenever they discovered new pieces of Sarah's legacy. "Your mom would be amazed to see how many gardens you two have helped plant," he said softly. The girls exchanged knowing looks before Sophie pulled something else from her backpack, a leather-bound journal similar to Sarah's diary. I've been working on something," she explained. "We call it the butterfly effect." Lucy continued, "It's stories from all the kids who come to the reading rooms, about how having a safe place to read and dream has changed their lives, about finding family in unexpected places." The journal was filled with entries, some written in careful childish script, others dictated to volunteers. Each one spoke of transformation, of hope found in stories, of connections made through shared experiences. Marcus recognized many of the names, children who had started as visitors to the reading rooms and had become regular participants in their programs. "We thought maybe," Sophie said, her hand automatically going to her charm bracelet, "we could make it part of the new library wing, like Mom's letters, but from everyone who's part of our growing family." Marcus looked at his daughters, Sophie, who had first taught him the meaning of unconditional love, and Lucy, whose presence had proved that family could expand in beautiful and unexpected ways. They had taken Sarah's legacy of love and storytelling and transformed it into something even more powerful, a community where everyone's story mattered. That evening, as they worked together to prepare for the library wing's opening ceremony, Marcus found himself surrounded by the evidence of how much their lives had changed. Jennifer was coordinating with volunteers, many of whom had started as parents of children in their programs. Mrs. Martinez was teaching a group of teens her secret empanada recipe in the community kitchen they'd added to the design. Ms. Patterson was training new storytellers, passing on the techniques Sarah had once used to make stories come alive. In the letter garden, Sophie and Lucy were helping younger children write their own messages to add to the butterfly wall. Each paper butterfly represented a hope, a dream, or a moment of connection. Together, they created a visual representation of Sarah's belief that love multiplies when shared. As Marcus watched his daughters work, he noticed how naturally they had absorbed Sarah's gift for making others feel seen and valued. They had an intuitive understanding of when a child needed encouragement, when they needed quiet support, or when they simply needed someone to listen to their story. The transformation wasn't just in the physical spaces they had created or the programs they had developed. It was in the countless small moments of connection, the way their family had grown to include not just Lucy, but all the children and families who had become part of their extended community. The morning of the library wing's opening dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring day that Sarah would have called perfect for new beginnings. The space was filled with excited chatter as families gathered for the ceremony, each person holding a paper butterfly that would become part of a special installation. Sophie and Lucy stood beside Marcus at the podium, their matching charm bracelets catching the light. Each girl now had her own collection of charms, telling the story of their growing family and shared adventures. The original butterfly charm from Sarah's bracelet had been carefully copied by a jeweler, so each girl could carry a piece of her legacy. A year ago, Marcus began his speech, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. A little girl asked me to write a letter to her mother in heaven. That simple request changed not just my life, but the lives of countless others. Today we're not just opening a library wing, we're celebrating the power of stories to connect hearts and build families. He gestured to the wall behind him, where Sarah's photograph had been incorporated into the design, surrounded by quotes from her letters and diary. Sarah Thompson believed that every child deserved a safe place to dream, to imagine, to believe in possibilities. She understood that sometimes the most important stories are the ones we help others write. Sophie stepped forward then, her voice clear and confident. My mom used to say that butterflies remind us that beautiful changes are possible. Every person who comes here brings their own story, and when we share our stories, they become part of something bigger. Lucy added her own thoughts, like how my story changed when I met Sophie and Dad. Now I get to help other kids find their own happy middles, just like I did. The ceremony continued with readings from children who had been impacted by the Foundation's programs. Each story reflected a different aspect of transformation, finding courage through books, building confidence through storytelling, discovering family in unexpected places. As the official ribbon was cut, Marcus watched his daughters lead the first group of children into the new space. The letter garden was already filling with butterflies, each one carrying messages of hope and connection. The reading nooks were quickly claimed by excited young readers, while parents gathered in the community areas, sharing stories and building new friendships. Later that evening, after the celebrations had wound down, Marcus found Sophie and Lucy in their favorite spot, the window seat they had added to the letter garden. They were adding their own butterflies to the wall, their messages joining the hundreds of others that created a tapestry of shared dreams and experiences. "Dad," Sophie called him over, holding out one last butterfly. "We saved this spot for you." Marcus took the paper butterfly, thinking carefully about what to write. Finally, he penned a simple message. "Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as simple requests. Thank you, Sarah, for sending me that little girl with a photograph. Our garden keeps growing, just as you always believed it would." As they sat together in the quiet library, surrounded by books and butterflies, and the endless possibilities of stories yet to be told, Marcus realized that their family's story was both complete and continuing. Every day brought new chapters, new characters, new opportunities to share the love that Sarah had planted in their hearts. Sophie leaned against his shoulder, her charm bracelet tinkling softly. Mom's last letter said that love is like a butterfly effect. One small act can create changes we never imagined. Do you think she knew about all of this? Marcus smiled, wrapping an arm around each of his daughters. "I think she knew that. Love has a way of finding its own path. She gave us the first seeds, but look at the garden we've grown together. Lucy touched one of the paper butterflies on the wall, reading its message of hope. And it keeps growing, doesn't it? Every new story, every new friend, every letter in the garden, they're all part of our family now. That's right, Marcus agreed, watching as the setting sun cast rainbow patterns through the butterfly installation, creating an ever-changing kaleidoscope of color and light. Because family isn't just about who you're born to. It's about who you choose to grow with, who you help bloom, and who helps you bloom in return. As they made their way home that evening, the three of them walking hand in hand through the city streets, Marcus thought about how far they had come from that first chance encounter. What had started as a simple act of kindness had grown into something more beautiful and meaningful than he could have ever imagined. Their story was a testament to Sarah's belief that love, like butterflies, had the power to transform everything it touched,